Welcome to Advanced Passion, the show where I invite a guest to evangelize me about something they are passionate about. It could be a movie, a book, some food, a place, a person, a cause, pretty much anything at all. Don't forget, as always, to like, subscribe so you don't miss any of these great conversations, and of course leave a comment below if you're watching this on YouTube and let us know what you think. Ask any questions that you might have. Today I am delighted to be joined by the legend and I say a legend a lot on this podcast when I'm introducing people, and I feel like now that I've said a legend for one person, to make the future guests not feel less, I have to introduce everybody as a legend. But if I hadn't done that, I definitely would be saying it about my guest today. A man, I don't want to give his age away, but a man who I saw preaching the gospel when I was an older teenager, and actually set the course of my life. Somebody that I looked at and thought that is something that I would want to do with my life, is let people know about the gospel in that creative communication style. So delighted today to have the legend that is Mark Ritchie with us.
Wow. I feel honored. I feel kind of honored. I feel very old. That's what I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you only have to feel old when you realize that I'm older than I look.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking, it's Mark. That's fine. It's fine. He's only 12, so don't worry. It's fine. No, he's not.
Wait, you can think of me as what age makes you feel better about yourself. That's absolutely fine. Mike, so glad to have you on the podcast today. I also love that you're standing up. You're the first guest we've had who's standing for the podcast.
Yes.
I'm the young whippersnapper. You're the more seasoned pro, and yet you're the one that's leading by example, standing up. Ready for a response.
I know.
I like as well.
I am. I'm ready. Do you know what? I did not think we'd be chatting about this, but I stand up for all the stuff. Do you know what? Because Winston Churchill, when he used to write his speeches, he did it standing up. Did you know that? True? That is 100% true. And I thought, when I heard that, I thought, do you know what? Whenever I'm doing anything, I write my sermons, my shows, I do it all standing up, because
that's amazing.
Yeah. So there you go.
That's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
If people don't take anything else, then they get the advice about standing up to plan a talk.
I mean, people are like, well, I was looking for a bit more than that.
Yeah, I was looking for a bit more than I just can't find my chair, so I'll stand up to write a talk. Yeah. Have you landed anything quite at the level of we'll fight them on the beaches yet?
That's the thing. I think in my head, I thought, if I stand up and write my talks, these talks are going to be amazing. But what I do now is I smoke very big cigars. So, hey.
Excellent.
Everything's a winner, yeah.
So, Mark, why don't we start by you just telling us a little bit about yourself, and other than your big cigar habit, who are you? And tell us about yourself.
Cool. So my name is Mark Ritchie. I'm a Scottish guy, and I live in Nottingham. I'm married. I've got a couple of great kids, and I get the amazing opportunity to sort of go around the country and also the world talking about God, and just love it. And I do it in lots of different ways, but preaching at events, but also do these comedy shows that I've had the chance to do at Edinburgh Fringe and in Australia, Melbourne, and all kinds of stuff. So love it. And I'm buzzing for this little podcast. Love it.
Yes. And you have your own podcast as well, which we'll swing back around to at the end as well. But just straight off the top, what is your podcast all about?
Yeah, it's called Soul Focus. And it's actually talking about a discipline that I've started to do called speaking to my soul every day. And this ritual, and I'm a Christian guy, so we say stuff like this all the time, but it has literally changed my life. Speaking to my soul every day has been the one thing in my Christian life that has been the most revolutionary. And I talk about that, and yeah, it's a good. We'll get a chance to unpack a bit more later. Yeah,
excellent stuff. All right, let's get stuck into your passion. I imagine there were many things that you could have got passionate about and tried to evangelize me about today. But Mark, the floor is yours. What am I getting evangelized about today?
I am wanting to evangelize you about comedy, about laughing, about hilarity. You know what? It's difficult to evangelize because you've got such a smiley, responsive face. I'm trying to imagine you as like a grumpy old woman. And I'm like saying, come on, lighten up, let's laugh. But that is what I want to chat about is comedy. I absolutely love it. I've got a passion for it. And it started when I was a kid at school. I don't know, Ben, if you can remember when you first made a group of people laugh. I don't know. Has that ever happened?
I'm still waiting, to be honest. I'll let you know when it happens.
Please drop me a text and we can celebrate together. Yeah. But I can remember being in school and I said this line out loud. It was in the middle of a test and the class just absolutely wet themselves. And I was just a young kid. Basically, honestly, the buzz that I felt that I'd made everybody laugh. And we all had this joint moment together. And I think it was then that I suddenly thought, how can I do this for the rest of my life? How can I make people it's that sense of everybody having the same moment right there. And you've kind of created that. You've created this moment and everyone's enjoying it and everyone's having fun. And you were the guy that served it up in the platter. What a great feeling, yeah.
Yeah, it's very addictive. You can see why people want to get into that as a career and stand up and get that buzz. I'm sure like playing in a World Cup final in front of fans or Roger Federer on Wimbledon Centre Court or whatever it might be has that great buzz to it, or performing on stage in theatre in an amazing dramatic role. I'm sure all of these live experiences have a buzz, but I wonder if there is anything quite like stepping up to make somebody laugh, which is such a special, profound thing that we experience as human beings.
Sure.
And just then hearing the laughter come back as you intentionally try to make people laugh, as that laughter comes back. I mean, you've experienced it yourself because you have actually done stand-up shows and tours and been at Edinburgh Fringe. What is that like?
I mean, when you have that moment, and because you can remember like that little gem, that joke that you were there when it was born, you were there when it was created, and you were sort of like, is this funny? And you kind of say it to your family and they roll their eyes and they're like, Dad, come on. And then like you kind of shape it and you create it and you try it, and then you sort of present it in front of like a huge crowd. And there's this kind of like almost like involuntary roar. The roar that, and you can see people are just opening up and loosening up. It's such a beautiful feeling. And you're like, wow, I created that. I created that from the beginning. I had that thought on a rainy night a Wednesday night. I thought that thing, wrote it down, and now it's making hundreds of people laugh. It's such a cool thing. But obviously the opposite is also true. I mean, when you've stood on a stage and literally died horrendously, oh man, there is no other feeling. Oh man, I mean, you can hear my pain. You can hear it.
Do you know what? I feel your pain because it actually happened to me once, Mark. And I think this is why I thought that maybe I had a little comedy sparkle, and it very quickly realized, no, I don't. I was at a Youth for Christ, and hey, shout out to all the wonderful workers at Youth for Christ around the world. I was at a Youth for Christ European conference, right? And they asked me to host something, and they said, just kind of keep it fun and light. And so me being me, I just thought, well, great. It's a chance to work out some comedy material between the other things that are happening. But you've got 400 Europeans in the room. None of them really speak English. They're all having it translated at different times and different cultures, some of whom I don't think understand that comedy is a thing that exists in the world. And so I'm doing this comedy routine, And like it's getting translated at different times. I mean, it's not funny anyway. That's part. I mean, who am I kidding? That's the biggest problem. Is it's not funny anyway. So my unfunniness is being translated at different times, different languages, different cultures. And I heard that the director of Youth for Christ at the time in the UK, a friend of both yours and mine, Roy Crown. I just heard him in one of the awkward silent moments. I just heard him lean over to somebody at one point and just say, "What's he doing?" And that was the day that my comedy career died. When Roy Crown leant over and said, "What's he doing?" And I thought,
"What's he doing?"
That's a good question, Roy. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Oh man, and it was so painful for me.
Man,
what on earth gets you back up there if you've experienced something like that? I've never got back up and done that again. Why would you get back up and do that again?
I know. I think I went and did an event in Belfast, Northern Ireland, in a pub. And oh my goodness. I mean, let's just say they gave me feedback, but it wasn't in a form. Do you know what I mean? They're not writing stuff down. They're not ticking boxes. They're telling me straight away whether I've been funny or not. And oh my goodness, one or two bits of it were brutal. But I just remember coming off and there had just been a tiny little glimmer of hope in some of it. And I thought, do you know what? I love doing this. And I'm not always going to be everyone's cup of tea. And I get that. And you just got to brush yourself down. Now, listen, if you try 10 times and 10 times it dies horrible, I feel the Lord maybe say something to you. I can hear the sweet Lord. The sweet Lord is just speaking to you there.
At the very least, the Lord's saying, get a ghostwriter. Who has inspired you along the way? Have there been, like, because obviously it's one thing to get the spark of telling some jokes and thinking, oh, that's fun. I like the reaction I get there. But I guess the other thing must be seeing people and thinking, wow, what a comedian. I've even heard some people almost say comedians are almost like modern day prophets, maybe a little bit less spiritual, but there's almost a prophetic edge sometimes to what comedians can bring out. Who has inspired you along the way?
So there's a guy that no one's ever heard of that I always blast on about, and he's called Daniel Kitson. And Daniel Kitson is like, he's actually called the comedian's comedian. He just doesn't like telly, he doesn't like YouTube, he doesn't like any of that stuff. So the only way you can see him is by going to see him in a theater. And he's just one of the funniest storytellers. And he just like, he cracks you up, but you can be in the middle of like the darkest story and he's just relaying truths and also at the same time making you wet your pants. I mean, he really does crack you up. And so I love him. And then I'm not one of those snotty, I don't know if you've ever met one of those guys. I don't laugh at Michael McIntyre.
Right.
I don't laugh at Peter Kay. I'm like, give it a rest. I find all the same guys funny that everybody else does. And I love it. And what's her name? I was laughing at Sarah Milligan the other day. She's like a Geordie and she was cracking me up. And I just love that these people have got the ability to just somehow hit you in between the eyes, make you laugh. They've got you. It's wonderful.
I guess it's like with comedians, you've got the same level of diversity in terms of content as you would in any art form or medium. Like you go watch a movie, you watch a drama, you watch an action film, whatever. And although comedians are all ultimately trying to do the same thing, they're trying to make you laugh. You can go see two comedians and it could be a complete, just as funny, and yet a completely different experience. One maybe is doing, commenting on current events, politics, and drawing out the funniness of that. Another one's doing, what happens when your toothbrushes tastes weird in the morning, and they're doing like slice of life stuff.
Oh, I understand.
Someone else history and whatever else it might be, right?
I think I understand why you weren't funny on that egg.
That was one of my best bits.
When you started going on about the toothbrush, I'm like, ooh, I think I understand now.
Oh dear.
No,
It's heartbreaking.
I
Yeah.
agree. But I think somebody said, I really like this. That just a few words, like those guys that can just like. This guy just stood up and he says, "Oh, I hate Russian dolls," and everyone's like looking, but I hate Russian dolls because yeah, they're just so into themselves, aren't they? And
Yeah.
you're just like, that is brilliant. You've just used
Yeah.
a few words, but you've got me. Or there's an Irish proverb that says, God is good, but don't dance on a small boat. And I just love it. It's just like a few words, but it gets you. You're like, oh, yeah, don't dance on a small boat. Great. And it's like the ability and the gifting to be able to cause a moment in such a quick time because you don't have long. That's the thing I've learned. You get up on that stage, you got to get people laughing within the first few seconds or you're gone. The longer you leave it without them laughing, it's doomsday. It's what we like to call in the business Ben's Youth for Christ event day.
Yeah, it's called a toothbrush joke. Don't do it. Don't go there. Don't go there. So yeah, like I think as one of the things I find really interesting about comedy is when comedy can be quite subversive and I guess particularly with satire, where you're using the comedy to actually make a point and draw people's attention to something that's absurd or perhaps unjust, or you want to make a point, and people are laughing, but at the same time that they're laughing, they're also kind of thinking, oh, hang on a minute. Well, I'm laughing at this, but that's a good point. We're wrong in our thinking there, or we've been hypocritical or judgmental, or whatever it might be. So I think, again, really sophisticated comedy, and I don't mean like like you said, in a snobby way. I just mean sophisticated in what it's trying to do, make people laugh, and as the defenses come down, you suddenly realize, oh, hang on a minute, there's something I need to think about here.
Well, yeah, I really love what you've said there, and that was kind of my story. I went to Bible college and I was a pastor, a preacher. I was doing a lot of events, and then my wife got me a ticket to go and see a guy called Dave Gorman, and we went and saw him. And I mean, he's a hilarious, mega talented guy, and exactly what you're saying. He's got a world view, and he was communicating it, and we were laughing. But he was also putting his stuff in there. We're like getting his opinion. We're getting his version of the world. And God spoke to me in that theater and said, I want you to do that. I want you to do that. And then, that's when the beginning of my journey of me kind of writing comedy shows that are funny, but are also just an opportunity to kind of get that truth in there. Where people, because, I think of laughing, that often when people laugh, they throw their arms up. It's like they come open-hearted.
Wow.
I guess the opposite of that is, when people have got their arms crossed, it's very defensive. It's very like, no one shall pass here. But when people laugh, it's like, oh, wow, everything kind of opens up. And it's like, this is a great opportunity for us to get truth in. It's a great opportunity for us to get like some great world honest truth into people's souls. And I absolutely love it, And I also, I don't want to go all deep and heavy with you, brother, because I definitely don't want you to be putting this in alongside the toothbrush gag. But I went through a bit of a tough time about, what would it be now, about 7 or 8 years ago. Now, I love laughing. I'm really enjoying laughing with you. I'm a really optimistic, bright, and easy, light guy. But I went through one of the darkest times. And I was going through this darkness. And I can remember it really well. I was driving to this event. And I'd got a friend driving with me because at that time I was in such a dark place that I just needed people near me, And he took me to the event, and I did the event, and it was all okay. And we were driving home, and I'll never forget it. We were on the M6, And I just started to say these things, and they were very, very funny. 3 lines that I said to this guy that I'd never said before. And he started laughing so much that he nearly like crashed the car. He had to, in the end, he had to pull the car over onto the lay-by. And the two of us on the M6 lay-by, we sat there and we laughed for about 15 minutes till there were tears coming down our face. And, you know, a few years after, I wrote a letter to that guy and I said, you know, what you don't realize is that was like a massive, like, pressure cooker moment for me. It was like my mum used to make soup in a pressure cooker, and, you know, the valve at the top. And if that valve comes off, the steam comes flying out. And, you know, it was like in that moment, all the pressure that was happening at that moment in my life, that laugh, honestly, it was like a spiritual moment where the steam just began to come out. And I wrote to him and I said, listen, I honestly believe that laughter is fizzy holiness. I really do believe that. When we laugh, I think it makes God's heart laugh. He loves to see his kids laugh and play and have hilarity. And in that moment on the M6, it was quite a moment for me because it was a pressure releasing moment. And, you know, a lot of people that are listening to this, we've had a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of people, and obviously it can come out sometimes sadly in anger. Sometimes it can come out in abuse or domestic struggle and all kinds of stuff. But I feel like God's given us this opportunity where we can just laugh and let some of that angst just come out and let some of that steam just come out. And it's a wonderful release. So, you know, I really love laughing. Yeah.
I think that's incredibly profound, because the danger that we can have is that some people can assume that laughter is some kind of trivialization of our wider circumstances. Yes. And yet, you know, gallows humor, as it would be known, reveals that there's something strange within us that when life's at its hardest point, when life's at its literally the gallows, you know, it doesn't get much worse than that. That there's sometimes this strange opportunity for laughter that in no way trivializes what's going on, but actually enables, like you said, that's a great imagery of the pressure cooker, enables a release. And I do wonder if in the church sometimes we may be a little bit prone to taking ourselves too seriously. I mean, like, so the gospel, right? We want to take the gospel absolutely seriously. It is the truth that sets people free. But we as the messengers who are carrying it, I think sometimes it's the other way around. We're quite trivial about the gospel, but we take ourselves very seriously.
That's a great point.
The wrong way around.
No, I agree. And you can imagine, I mean, I've been in church basically like my whole life, and there have been times, I mean, when I left Bible college, I went to this church in Barnsley, and I was the assistant minister, and it was quite a traditional church. And this is the kind of thing, I would laugh at this kind of stuff, and everyone around me was like horrified that I was laughing. But the senior leader, he was a really lovely guy, but he was quite formal and stuff. And we used to have this lady, and she was quite an old lady who used to play the piano. And honestly, she was touching 100. She was quite an old lady. Anyway, our senior leader, our pastor, he came out of the side room. He came and he shuffled along, and no one really saw what he did. But what he did is he put a bag under the piano. He kind of put this offering bag. And then he came to the microphone and he said, those of you that would like to give to the missionaries, there's an old bag at the piano. And I fell off my chair. I was gone. It's an old bag at the piano. And the thing is that like people were like, how can you laugh at that? But you see, the thing is, I agree with you, Matt. It's like we take ourselves so seriously. I think God is saying to the angels, come and have a look at this. Come and have a look at this. These guys are crazy. And it's like, we just need to take ourselves less serious, don't we? But you're 100% right. We want to take the gospel serious. You know, we want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving me thoughts now of God gathering all the angels of heaven around and saying, "Look at this joker. He's trying to make a joke out of a toothbrush," and all, all of heaven laughing while nobody else on earth does.
Yeah.
But I think that we know it's laughter is the best medicine and all of that. And there was that Robin Williams movie from back in the day, Patch Adams, I think it was called, where he is a bit of a wacky doctor and he tries to help his patients by doing silly things and making them laugh and raising, people's self-esteem, alleviating some of the pressures on people. And again, I think there's clearly something to that. I think even clinically, people would medically agree that if you can foster joy, not bury your head in the sand about the truth of what's going on, but approach it with a positive outlook, of course, and even with some laughter, which I think from a Christian perspective probably ties into the idea of humility. I think if you're consumed by pride, you're going to find it very hard to ever be self-effacing or laugh at yourself or whatever. But if you're truly humble before God and before others, then it seems like one of the default responses that we should often have is just to kind of laugh a little bit at ourselves.
I so agree. Like, we just got to learn to laugh at ourselves. I find a lot of things that I do really, really like hilarious. I'm just like, I can't believe that I just did that. And I'm that guy that I'll tell everyone. And I remember somebody said to me, Mark, I wouldn't tell people that, that keep that to yourself. And I'm like, no, I want people to know that I'm human and that I mess up and that I do ridiculous things. When I was telling you about that laugh on the M6, that was like during what had happened is I'd been on a massive mission carrying a cross over Britain. And basically, it was an incredible mission. But at the end of it, it was a 70-day mission that I did. And I walked like 700 miles and I did 30 events. It was incredible. But when I got to the end of it, that's when I went into this very bleak time. And I can remember that it was like really horrendous. And I realized that inwardly, everything was out of order. And that was when God showed me this picture. And I'll just really share it quick. But obviously I live in Nottingham and I was at the River Trent and there was a boat going past. And I saw, maybe like the Oxford versus Cambridge kind of boats where you've got all the rowers, but then you've got the cox of the boat, who's that, the woman or the man that's speaking to the boat. And God spoke to me so clearly and said, Mark, that is you. He says like that, the boat is your soul. And like those rowers are like your emotions. They're like your mind. They're your will. But that little guy at the end that's speaking to the boat, that is you. And you need to speak to your soul.
Wow.
And I started to look into it and I saw that David spoke to his emotions. David spoke to his will. David spoke to like his thoughts, and I started to put this into place. So I've done this podcast called Soul Focus, and you can get it wherever you get your podcast from. And basically it's just talking about what do we say to our soul? How do we go about speaking to our soul? And it's just that thing about like leading yourself well, becoming someone who leads well, And, we've been through a bit of a horrendous season, but people are saying, have the government led us well? I don't know about that stuff. But what I need to concentrate on is, am I leading myself well? Are you leading yourself well? So I would encourage everyone to maybe get hold of that podcast, Soul Focus by Mark Ritchie, and you'll really sort of kind of see some good stuff there. Yeah,
I'd love to talk more about that, really, because I think it plays into one idea of the sad clown or the depressed comic. And there have been kind of notable examples over the years of very successful, famous comedians who make the multitudes laugh and seem themselves like just a bundle of joy. And yet behind the scenes, off stage, their lives are just a complete mess, and they're broken and they're depressed and they're anxious. And, their life is the antithesis of comedy in itself. They're able to express a comedy styling, but they're not able to live in a sense of joy that would come from that comedy styling day by day by day. And I think we're really good, aren't we, as human beings at kidding ourselves and lying to ourselves. And it sounds to me like what you're talking about there is actually, we got to stop lying to ourselves. We got to stop kidding ourselves and recognize what's actually going on and then speak to it, to put it right.
No, really well said. I was doing a comedy show during that time, and I drove down. It was out on the outskirts of London, and I was there a bit early, and I just went down 2 or 3 doors down the road from the venue to a Starbucks. And I was sitting in the Starbucks, and honestly, Ben, I just started sobbing. I was on my own, sitting at this table, and I just started to cry. And, you know, I thought to myself, wow, people will be coming to see this funny Scottish guy. You know, if they happen to nip in for a espresso just before the show, they're going to see this guy weeping. And it just kind of really showed me clearly is that, like, yeah, do you know what? I don't want to be that guy who on the stage, I'm exactly this hilarious, funny guy, but behind the heart, in the soul, things are out of order. I want things to be in good order. And that was when I had to start speaking to my emotions, you know, because my emotions were really bullying me, and my thoughts, like, you know, and I say this to a lot of people. I say, just because you feel something doesn't mean it's true. You know, I was feeling things, and my wife was saying, Mark, you don't believe that. And I was like, I must believe it because it feels so strong. And, you know, I realized, no. I've got to, just like David, why are you downcast, oh my soul? He spoke to his soul. Why are you down? Praise God. He spoke to his soul. Come on, we're going to praise God. And, you know, people say, oh, I can't worship Jesus today because I don't feel like it. No, speak to your soul. Let's go. Let's do this. It's not about your feelings ruling the roost. It's about you taking charge and leading yourself well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's brilliant. We talked a little bit about how comedy can be quite subversive, and through satire, people are laughing, and then suddenly they realize what they're laughing about. Oh, actually, I need to maybe learn something about that. And I think sometimes we can kind of go through life hoping to get all of our lessons subversively, that we'll just kind of go through, and then at different times we'll be like, oh my goodness, yeah, I need to think about that. And oh, I've seen somebody post on Twitter about that. I should probably think about that. Or that comedian did a funny joke, but it made me rethink my views about this, that, or the other. And we kind of go through life somewhat growing subversively rather than intentionally. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is actually we need to approach it completely differently. We actually need to get really hyper intentional, saying, I'm not just going to wait for a subversive comedy or a tweet or something to prompt my thinking. I'm going to get ahead of it, and I'm going to speak to my soul. I'm going to speak to the things I feel. I'm going to speak to the situations that are in life. And by God's grace and power, but through my own initiative, I'm going to try and take some control. Actually, the way that I'm going to take control is by deferring to the one who is in control himself.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I'm like, you know, I quote all these Psalms to myself every day, and you know, you are my refuge, you are my salvation. You know, God, you know, you are my refuge. I will not be shaken. And I say these words, I will not be shaken, to my soul, but not because Mark Ritchie is awesome, but because God's awesome, you know? And I'm like, I will not be shaken. And it's like, this is, you know, a lot of people read self-help books. That's cool. But this is Bible. This is Bible. I will not be shaken. And that's what I speak over my soul every day. And it's not because, like, as I say, I'm some kind of incredible champion. It's because God is awesome. And that means I will not be shaken. So I really agree with you. I have become much more intentional. I have a little notebook with me all the time, so I direct my thoughts. I do not just allow my thoughts to do whatever they want. If I'm in line, I don't open my phone. What I do is I get my little notebook out, and in there it's got scripture. In there it's got things I want to think about today, you know, and I think we just need to become a lot more intentional. And then I feel for me, then to bring it all the way around to the humor again, is that, like, then when I'm being funny, it's from an authentic, clean place. And it's not from like a dark kind of horrendous place. Because, you know, being at the Fringe, I've seen some acts and you know that the guy's making everyone laugh, but there's a sadness and a desperation behind the laughter. And I'm like, I want behind my laughter there to be hope and joy and for people to be like, and this was one of the greatest compliments I ever got, was that my parents invited their neighbours to come to see my show at the Edinburgh Fringe. And they actually came. And they came to my show and then they went to see another show straight after. Because if you've ever been to the Fringe, there's thousands of shows going on. And their son had actually bought them a ticket to go and see quite a disgusting, bit of a smutty comedian. And the next day, the neighbours came round to my mum and dad and they said, we walked out of the smutty comedian because when we were listening to your son, he was making us laugh, but there was some kind of purity and cleanliness about it. Wow. And they said, these are not Christians. And they said, and then when we went to the other guy, it was like it was humor, but it was dark. And there was something that was distasteful about it. And, you know, that really inspired me that it's like, you know what, even in the humor does not need to be dragging people down. It doesn't need to be kind of about stuff that's disgusting. It can actually be uplifting and it can be about pure whole things. It's good.
I mean, what better testimony could there be really than people who are not kind of following Jesus, not with that spiritual awareness, recognizing something within that environment, within what you say, the things that you do. I mean, that's about as good a testimony as you can get for the value of not just trying to make people laugh, but bringing something. I guess the word, and it's a slightly overused word, and we use it a lot on this podcast. I mean, maybe more than we should, but it's at the heart of so much of what we talk about in our efforts to evangelize. The word is authenticity. There's something authentic about it, and life-giving and peace-bringing. And for me, that's gospel, isn't it? The gospel has to be authentic, it has to be life-giving, and it has to be peace-bringing. And so whatever we're doing, whether we're playing sport, whether we're making movies, being a comedian, writing poetry, teaching a group of year 6 kids, giving someone a diagnosis as a doctor, whatever it is, you know, and it might sound funny. In fact, that doctor one's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I've just said it needs to be life-giving. What if you're a doctor giving a prognosis of death? That somebody is medically speaking, as a Christian doctor, is there a way that even in the message of physical death, the gospel is present? And I'm not necessarily saying that, you know, that you preach the gospel to the person as you're giving them their diagnosis, but just in your countenance, in your personality, in your it's a spiritual thing, isn't it? In your spiritual presence as God works through you, is there a sense of joy there that some people might even think is inappropriate? In certain situations, and yet we know is the root of our strength and our hope. No, I think you're onto something amazing there. And I think, you know, the Bible says that we are the light of the world, right? And I think that for so long we've only known one kind of light, and that is like the searchlight into people's eyes. Now, you've heard me preach. I preach the gospel. I go for it. Cross, Jesus, gospel, repent, all of that. But when I'm at the Edinburgh Fringe, I can't do a comedy show where it's basically do a funny little joke and then I'm straight in there with cross and I'm straight in there with repentance. And I've got to kind of do it in a different way. And it's actually a guy called Paul Scanlon that really helped me with this, is that actually light, you know, companies pay millions of pounds to get the lighting just right, nuanced lighting. And I feel as evangelists, as people that want to communicate gospel, we definitely want to have those moments where it's like, boom, this is a gospel, full on, in your eyes. People are like, I need to get saved. But then we often have other moments as well where it's like, this is just a little bit nuanced. This is a bit different. And for people like my dad's neighbors to be going, why is Mark's show? What is it about the atmosphere? What is it about? There's some purity about this. And, you know, you're talking about the doctor. How can we
We want people to carry the presence of God. How
Right.
can that doctor carry the presence of God when he's telling a patient some bad news? And it's like, for too long, evangelism has just been one kind of searchlight right in your face. We need to have all these different lights that are nuanced, but actually are all shining towards Jesus. That's what we want.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, we're coming to the end of our time on this episode, but before we wrap up, I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about speaking to your soul stuff. And I guess we've kind of skirted around it a little bit already in what you were just saying there, but I guess a bit more explicitly, like in terms of speaking to our soul and getting ourselves right with the Lord daily. What does that then mean for our evangelism as we then take our personal walk, speaking to our soul, and then as we want to go authentically into the world? What are some practical things that you would offer to listeners about how they can then transition that from something which is quite introspective, and that's a good thing, to something that then blesses the world?
Yeah. Well, I think there are a lot of people feel the things about when it comes to speaking to their mates about God or evangelizing. A lot of people, it's things like fear of rejection. It's like people being worried that they'll be called a Bible basher or a God freak, or, that you'd be, well, like even like horrendous other words that are like not representative of what we are. But people are like, oh, you must be that if you're a Christian. So people get fearful. And I think what's been helpful is the whole thing about speaking to my soul and bringing order to my soul is actually, if inwardly things are in order, then that really helps you outwardly with the challenges of, how much do I care about this person being offended if I say a few words about Jesus? Well, you start to get this eternal perspective, and you're like, if I had the cure for cancer, but I was worried that it might offend people if I told them, oh, it's about this yellow pill. It's like we've got the greatest answer of all time, but we're worried that we might upset and offend people, even though everybody else in the world seems to fly whatever flag they want to fly. Yeah. We get all nervous about, oh, it's a personal thing. And I think it just helps you with that. When everything inwardly is in good order, it helps you to do things outwardly that maybe you would shrink back from. So, I would be able to maybe pluck the courage to speak to my mate in the coffee shop or in the pub or whatever, and ask them a few questions that would lead into a faith conversation. Maybe something like, have you ever worked out what your purpose in life is? Or if God was your neighbor, what would you nip round and ask God for? Great questions that we can ask, but we probably wouldn't do it if things are not in good order inwardly, because we would be terrified. Oh, I just can't deal with the pressure. I can't deal with somebody being offended. I'm not in the right space to be in this chat. You know what I'm saying? Whereas if we can get ourselves in a good place inwardly, we will see incredible things happen outwardly.
Wow, super powerful. And I guess to finish, bringing it full circle back to the comedy, what role do you see comedy playing for the average believer who wants to share Jesus with anyone and everyone, friends, colleagues, whoever it might be? What role do you see comedy playing in that?
Well, I really see it because I think you said it earlier, which is brilliant, is that when comedians kind of just name stuff and just say stuff and put a label on it. And, I think one of the great things about humor is that it can speak to our flaws. And I think that, when you're able to kind of laugh about messing up, and you're able to laugh about getting stuff wrong, you're able to say, I've got quite a bit of garbage in my life. And then you kind of laugh and you say, here's some of my crap, here's some of my garbage. But then you're able to say, but guess what? I took all that garbage and that rubbish to the cross of Christ. And Jesus took my garbage and he gave me his clean cloak, his robe of righteousness. And I am clean before God. You can do it very easily when you're able to kind of use humor as like saying, I mess up, I get stuff wrong. But if we approach all this from a sense of like, we're too uptight to laugh and we're too sort of take ourselves so serious, there's just no way people are wanting to listen to us. There's no humility in that. There's no sense of kind of like, and when we sort of say, oh, you're a dirty sinner, you've messed up, you've screwed up, all we come over is tight-mouthed, judgmental people. Whereas that's not the Bible. The Bible is that we come and we say, I have messed up. You have messed up. We've all messed up. And we're able to take our mess to Christ. And Christ comes and cleans us up. It's like, what a powerful message. And we're able to do it. And that's why I think humor is so fantastic at this.
Amen. Amazing. Mark, thanks so much for joining us today on Advanced Passion. Just remind people where they can check out the podcast and any other links for social media that you want to give out.
Well, brilliant. Soul Focus, wherever you get your podcasts, have a look. Soul Focus, Mark Ritchie. And then if you look at Mark Ritchie UK on Instagram or Mark Ritchie on Twitter, I do love to put up a load of nonsense on there. I always like to put little gags and daft stuff. So if anybody wants to have a look, that'd be fantastic. Mark Ritchie UK on Instagram and Mark Ritchie UK Twitter, you'll see it all there. It's good.
I have a feeling there'll be a number of toothbrush-related jokes incoming on there. I can feel that you've been inspired today to, yeah, I mean, mouth-based humor.
Just at the end of this podcast, you know, I just want to turn to someone and say, what is he doing? What is he doing?
Oh, it's too painful. Don't bring back the memories, Mark. Oh dear. All right. Well, I won't do any more comedy, but maybe we'll do some more of these podcasts, and hopefully we can have you back on again in the future. And hopefully you who are listening and watching will tune in next time. Don't forget, as ever, to like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you very soon.